The Seahawks had the number one ranked defense in the regular season for a reason, but they'll have a tough test going up against Drake Maye and the New England Patriots. What advantages do they have on that side of the ball heading into Super Bowl 60? We're going to be breaking it all down here on our Tuesday edition, Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on our Tuesday episode by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, whether you're in Monroe, Washington, or across the state border in Moscow, Idaho. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week and helping Locked On Podcast Network become the number one sports podcast network. We're now less than 5 days away from Super Bowl 60. Seahawks going to be really shifting prep into high gear tomorrow with their normal practice week opening. Had some media availability today in San Jose. We're going to be talking defensive advantages for Mike Macdonald's crew heading into this game, some over or under prop bets, where things stand heading into this game from a Seahawks perspective, and defensive X factors to watch this week. Could there be another Malcolm Smith emerge in this fourth Super Bowl for the Seahawks? All this brought your way courtesy of your friends over at FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Now for your lead story here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Pretty much from start to finish this season, Mike Macdonald had a top 3 scoring defense, and the Seahawks finished the year ranked number 1, just edging out the Houston Texans. This has been a stingy defense at all 3 levels pretty much all season long, except for a couple games against the Los Angeles Rams. And even those games, they found ways to get stops when they needed to. Now they'll face the number 2 scoring offense in the NFL in the New England Patriots. And I think this is getting lost on some people, Rob. This is an offense that has put up a ton of points all year. And I know you look at the schedule, they only had a handful of playoff teams that they played on their schedule. But still, Drake Maye and this Patriots offense put up a ton of points. They've been scoring a lot of points in these playoff games as well. The snow got into the mix in that last game in Denver, but capable of putting up big points anytime they take the field. So there's going to be plenty of challenges there. With that being said, the Seahawks, as we talked about with advantages on offense, I think they might have more advantages on the defensive side of the ball going up against this offense that's got a lot of guys playing in their first Super Bowl, including Drake Maye. And I think we've got to start this discussion with not the O-line as a whole, but 2 offensive linemen for the New England Patriots who have struggled in this playoff. Both rookies, Will Campbell at the tackle position, as well as Wilson, their guard from Georgia. These 2 guys have given up 5 combined sacks and 20 pressures in the playoffs. I think that experience and versatility that Seattle's got on the defensive line going up against those 2 players in particular, that could be a big problem for New England to have to overcome.
I think that's very well said, sir. I think that a lot of people would be surprised that New England finished second in all of the NFL in points scored. It really speaks to just how complementary, very similar to the Seahawks, but how complementary the New England offense is. You have an MVP caliber quarterback in Drake Maye. You also have a running game, including Maye, that ran for an awful lot of yards and touchdowns, and yet I think that the way that Seattle matches up against New England, Seattle's defense against New England's offense actually is one of the huge advantages for the Seahawks in this game. And there was an awful lot of our listeners and viewers, and thank you as always for all of your support, that if they were listening or watching yesterday, that maybe they were surprised that I was as concerned as I am about how Seattle's offense matches up against New England's defense. I do think that is problematic. But you nailed the matchup here that I think that gives the Seahawks the biggest advantage, being against those 2 rookie offensive linemen on the left side. I would argue even the entire offensive line for the New England Patriots. There's a reason why Drake Maye had to run as often as he did, is because this offensive line just simply isn't that good, at least in pass protection. They can move some people in the running game. We'll get to that in a moment. But I just really am kind of almost frothing at the mouth when it comes to the excitement for Seattle's defensive line, just how versatile they are, how deep they are, how experienced they are against a New England offensive line that, as you mentioned, struggled in the postseason. And obviously, that was going against some elite defenses, Houston and Denver in particular, and the different things that they bring up. But there's no question about it. When you have guys like DeMarcus Lawrence and Leonard Williams, Uchenna Nwosu, I mean, some sage veterans out there, I really do think that they are going to give New England an awful lot of trouble. And so I think that this is the number one match, offense, defense, or special teams, that is going to help the Seahawks, wind up controlling this game.
I think the Seahawks have something else working for them that none of the other teams that have played New England this postseason could match. And that is the ability to have multiple players that can successfully be deployed as spies on Drake Maye. And I do expect Mike Macdonald is going to do that some in this game. He has not done that a lot this year, but they were very successful doing that against Kyler Murray when they have played against mobile QBs the few times they've done that. Jaden Daniels in that game against Washington, there were times they were using spy deployments. And Seattle's got probably the best quarterback spy that you could ever create in a lab in Nick Emanwari. I mean, we're talking a guy in the low 4.3s that can fly sideline to sideline, physically is going to be faster than pretty much any quarterback that tries to run the football, and is a guy that finishes tackles as well. And I think Drake Thomas is somebody that we'll see in that capacity as well. I call him the human bullet. If you've watched that guy fly sideline to sideline, Seattle's got dudes that can run horizontally with the best of them. And I think Seattle's going to mix some of that stuff in this game, particularly Nick Emanwari. And you can get creative with the way you put him in spy, because he doesn't have to be right in the middle of the field just because how fast he is and how much ground he makes up. You can have him rush off the edge, drop back, and then spy on May, and he can run him down. There's just not very many human beings that you can do that with. I think that is a major advantage from a scheme standpoint for Mike Macdonald, at least to have in his back pocket that he can utilize in this game.
Yeah, I mentioned this before. I've always used you use the moniker there, human bullet, for Drake Thomas, which I like, because the guy just flies around and he creates destruction everywhere he goes. I've often used the term eraser to describe a player that has something close to the versatility that Nick Emanwari provides the Seahawks, a guy that can play linebacker, can play safety, can also play that nickel cornerback spot. I don't know that I've ever seen a guy that has this type of playmaking ability at his age. So there's no doubt that if we're going to, kind of question the experience of the Patriots offensive line, then obviously Nick Emanwari, especially considering the fact that he missed a couple of games due to injury, there's an inexperience factor here with him as well. But you made the excellent point about how Will Campbell and Jarrett Wilson struggled in the playoff games, where Nick Emanwari, it feels like he's getting stronger as the season goes on. And I just think that his straight line speed, his instincts, his awareness, his size, physicality, reliable open field tackling skills, I do think that allows him to be a very unique eraser, very unique spy candidate for the Seahawks to slow down Drake Maye, because again, that is a huge part of his success. I mentioned this before, that he is among the NFL's leaders this year at the quarterback position in terms of creating first downs. He also was very effective as a touchdown producer himself. So I do think that it is critical that Seattle slows down Drake Maye, the runner. And I feel confident in their secondary to be able to slow down Drake Maye and the Patriots receivers as well.
And look, this is a Patriots receiving core that has improved leaps and bounds, and the numbers show it. I mean, Kayshon Boutte's he's got a 51% explosive play rate as a pass catcher. Now, he's only caught 33 passes, but 17 of them have been explosive plays. So he has truly been a feast or famine weapon as a secondary target for Drake Maye. Mac Hollins has got a 30% explosive play rate, which that was not his calling card at any point in his NFL career. But I still look at who they have on the outside. Even Stephon Diggs, like I'm comfortable with Reek Woolen or Devin Witherspoon going up against him. I'm comfortable with Josh Jobe being able to handle those receivers. There's certainly not a Puka Nacua or a Devontae Adams in this receiving core. And so, again, that's not disrespecting what New England's got there. They've got weapons. But I think the Seahawks match up really well with them in the secondary in this game. As you've mentioned a couple times already this week, I like the matchups there. And I don't feel like there's a guy that's going to take over games the way that Puka Nacua can, and even Devontae Adams still at this stage of his career can. New England's got some pretty good receivers. I just don't know they have anybody that really scares you that much. I mean, even Stephon Diggs at this point of his career, a lot of his damage in the middle of the field, I feel like the Seahawks can take that away. Not a guy that wins a ton vertically anymore. So we'll see. Again, this is not taking any shots in New England, and I expect they're going to hit some shots downfield because they've been doing it all year. But I really like this cornerback versus receiver matchup in Seattle's favor as long as their guys on the outside play disciplined football. That's when they get in trouble, is when Woolen and Witherspoon and those guys get undisciplined. And I don't expect in the Super Bowl that is going to be a big issue. When we come back, let's do some over or under here. Middle of the week, game day. Going to have some prop bets coming from our friends courtesy at FanDuel, and a few that we made up on our own because we have to do that. But we're going to get to some over or under coming up next here on our Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets. That's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast. Whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees, Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise charge at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save me hours every week. And knowing you can reach HR certified experts anytime gives you real peace of mind. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/lockedinNFL and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/lockedinNFL. That's gusto.com/lockedonNFL. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get into the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorites, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Now take your fandom of the Seahawks and the Locked On Seahawks podcast to another level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Seahawks with no interruptions, members-only Discord access to speak with Locked On hosts such as myself and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. And to sweeten the pot until the Super Bowl on Sunday, subscribers can use the code Super Bowl and you get the first month free. That's right, the code Super Bowl. You get the first month free by going to lockedonseahawks.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. All right, Rob, it is time for us to divert away from, well, there's still going to be some hard-hitting analysis in here, but thanks to our friends at FanDuel, we've got prop bets ready to roll for Super Bowl 60, and we're going to be dishing out our thoughts on several of these for the Seattle Seahawks. Let's start on offense with the most obvious one, and this is over or under. I'm going to give you the prop bet number, and you're going to tell me whether the player or the position group or the team is going to be over or under that mark. First one here, Sam Darnold passing yards, 228.5 passing yards. Over or under, Rob?
It's going to, anybody who listened to yesterday's show or watched, I was very concerned about Sam Darnold and Seattle's passing attack against this New England's offense. So, Corbin, I'm going with the under on that number.
I'm going to go over. Not much, but I'm going to probably go in like the low 240s on that. I think Sam's going to still be able to get it. We have to remember New England is middle of the pack for explosive pass plays given up this year. So I think Seattle's going to get a chance to get some chunk plays in this game. And for that reason, I'm going to go a little above that. But I don't know if I'd be comfortable betting on this one necessarily. But I'll go with the low 240s. Ken Walker III, rushing yards, 73.5. And I will tell you, this has dipped the last couple of days since the props first came out, Rob. It was closer to 80 yards. Now it's 73.5.
And this is the one that I am going to go over on the Seahawks perspective. I think the Kenneth Walker III has a splashy game. I think he breaks for at least one that's 25 plus yards. I think that's going to get him over the top. I'm looking for a game over or near at least 100 yards.
I'm going over on this one too. I think he gets to 100 yards. And I know New England's run defense has been fantastic, but they didn't have to deal with Bo Nix last week. CJ Stroud made a lot of self-inflicted mistakes in the division round. I just don't feel like Seattle's going to be making those mistakes, and I think their passing game is much more prolific. I think it's going to make it harder to really pin down the run. I expect some big runs from Ken Walker, so I'm going way over on that one. Jackson Smith-Njigba receiving yards, 93.5 yards. He's only had a couple games where he's gone under 70, but he hasn't had many games over 100 in the last month and a half either. So this is an interesting one from an over or under perspective.
The scout in me doesn't even want to watch this game. I just want to watch Jackson Smith-Njigba against Christian Gonzalez every single snap. I still think that the Gonzalez is an elite player, and I think he is going to limit JSN's effectiveness. I'm going under on this one as well.
I'm going to go over. I'm going to go with 98. I don't think he gets quite 100, but I have the confidence that he's going to get above this number, even against Christian Gonzalez. We've seen JSN cook some really good corners this year. I think that he's going to have a few big plays in this one to get to that total. AJ Barner, 2.5 receptions, over or under. This is a defense for the Patriots that finished 11th in receptions allowed to tight ends this year.
Yeah, this is the one I feel the strongest about so far. I double that number. I think that AJ Barner has a very splashy performance in this game.
Yep, I'm going over on that one as well. I could see him being right up there with JSN for targets and receptions in this game, just because of the way New England's defense operates, what they've allowed this year. So I'm hitting that one over hard. Explosive 20-plus yard pass plays, over or under 3.5. This is a defense. I know they've been good, but as I mentioned, they've given up 74 explosive pass plays this year. So it's not like they have been perfect at not giving these up. They've given up plenty of explosive pass plays this year. They've just been really good at limiting them in the playoffs, and they're hot in that regard right now.
I am going to go over on this one. And again, it sounds a little counterintuitive after we're just having the conversation here about JSN and Sam Darnold. I both think it would be under, but I do think that you're going to get potentially a big play by Barner, perhaps a big play by maybe an Elijah Arroyo or a Jake Bobo. Somebody it's a little bit out of the normal purview of what we're talking about, and then definitely a big one to Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah, to me, this is another one that I'm hitting hard over. I think they get to 5 in this game. I just think that the passing game, that might be what really boils down to most of Sam Darnold's yardage. I don't know that they're going to be as efficient as they've been throwing the football, but they're going to get some big plays in this contest. All right, let's talk defense now. Over under sacks on Drake Maye, 4.5. He has been sacked 5 times in all 3 playoff games. So if you're basing it off that, you would think that this one's an easy over, but these games are always challenging from a sack perspective.
I think this is one that Seattle can get comfortably. We talked about this before. I really think that Will Campbell at left tackle, Jarrett Wilson at guard, and then even Morgan Moses, the veteran at the right tackle position. He was only basically tagged with 2 sacks so far this season, but he gave up an awful lot of pressures, and some that they weren't marked as pressures by analytics websites like PFF. But if you watch the tape, they absolutely were. The only reason I think that Seattle may not get that number is just because I think that Drake Maye, is going to be enough of a rusher that I think that Seattle is going to not quite pin their ears back fully. But I do think that Drake Maye is going to be an awful lot of pressure all game long. Again, I'm going to go with the over.
I'm going to go under just barely. I have him getting to 4 sacks. I do think the fact that Mike McDonald is going to have his team playing kind of that cautious aggression in terms of their pass rushing lanes, it might take away a couple chances where they could get sacks, but it's going to mitigate some of those run lanes and making it he can get outside. So I think they would trade a couple sacks for limiting his ability to escape the pocket and run for first downs and do a lot of damage. So I'm actually going to go under on that one with 4. Pass breakups for the Seahawks defense, 3.5. This one's interesting because Drake Maye has been extremely accurate downfield, but teams have been able to get to the football against him, particularly in the short to intermediate game.
Yeah, this is a difficult one. I'm going to go with the over for Seattle's defense on this one. I do think that there is going to be some passes if New England is behind early in this game, as I expect that they will be, and they're trying to work their way back. I think it's going to be pretty predictable where they're going to be focusing. I'm expecting to be to Stephon Diggs and to Hunter Henry, the tight end, as well as the backs. I think that's going to be Nicky Manwari territory. And so I do think that Seattle is going to just get over that PBU number.
I'm going to go way over. I'm going with 6 of them. I think they're going to get their hands on the football a lot in this game. I mentioned it in the first segment that I feel like, at least athletically in the secondary, that Seattle has major advantages there. And I think they're going to be able to close gaps on passing windows and get their hands on football. So I'm going to go with 6. And that doesn't mean they're going to win the game, but I think that they are going to have a lot of opportunities to get interceptions or at least get pass breakups in this contest because of the athleticism they have in their secondary. Turnovers forced, over or under, Rob, 1.5 going into this game.
1.5. Wow. I'm going to go. I'm going to go under on that. I think that this is going to be, as I mentioned before, I think it's going to be a nip and tuck kind of a game. I'm not expecting there to be a lot of turnovers on either side. I think that Seattle is going to be lucky to muster 1 turnover. So like I said, I'm going with the under on that.
You know what? I'm going to go under too. I'm going to go with 1. There's going to be 1 turnover, 1 interception against Drake Maye in this game. Listen to our Friday show. By that point, I'll tell you who gets that interception. But I think that they get 1 turnover in this game. 2, I just think that this Patriots team does a good job of not beating themselves, just like the Seahawks do. I don't see a lot of turnovers in this game. Points on special teams, 9.5, over or under.
Ooh, interesting one. This one was a prop bet I wasn't expecting.
This is one I would not bet on.
Yeah, I do feel strongly that Rashid Shaheed is going to make a splashy play. I think there's a very good chance that he gets a return for a touchdown. I assume that this number, as you just mentioned, Corbin, is from the Seahawks perspective, not just overall.
Yeah, Seahawks. It's Seahawks.
Okay, gotcha. Because I'm going to say Marcus Jones, the returner for the Patriots, got 2 punt return touchdowns himself as well. No, that's just a little bit too high of a number for me. 9 points, maybe I would have gone with. Certainly 8.5 I would have gone with. I think that Jason Myers is going to be a busy man. And again, I mentioned Rashid Shaheed. But at the same time, 9.5 is just a little bit too rich for my blood.
Yeah, I have to go barely under. I think they get right in that 8 or 9 point range. If Shaheed returns one for a touchdown, that totally changes this. But I have a feeling New England's going to play keep away most of the game with him after what he's done this year. So I'm going to go under on that one. Last one real quick. Total points in this game. This is from FanDuel right now. 45.5 points. Over or under?
It's funny because I've been thinking 24-20 the entire time, which would obviously be 44 points. But I'm going to go with that then. I'll go over on that, but I think it's going to be very close to that number.
I'm going to go under. I'm going to go a little bit under that right now. I think this is one that I could go either way. It can flip a coin on because I do think it's going to be in that 42 to 48 point range. combined in this game. So there's another one I don't know I'd feel very safe about putting a marker on, but I'm going to go under on this, just a hair under, 43, 44 point range, I think is about where this game falls for total points. Coming up next, let's shift our gears back to the analysis scope. We're going to talk X factors. Yesterday was offense for the Seahawks. We're going to break down some players that maybe aren't the biggest names or aren't the biggest superstars that have a chance to make a major impact in this game defensively for the Seahawks. We'll get to that up next here on our Tuesday edition, Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by Home Chef. As the new year continues to get rolling, a lot of people are trying to simplify their routines, and dinner's a big part of that. Between busy work days, cold winter nights, and packed schedules, having an easy, reliable dinner plan makes a huge difference, and that's where Home Chef comes in. Home Chef takes the stress out of cooking by delivering fresh, pre-portioned ingredients right to your door with easy-to-follow recipes that actually taste great. They're rated #1 by users of other meal kits for quality, convenience, value, taste, and recipe ease, and it's easy to see why. Over 30 weekly options, including family-sized meals and different dietary choices. Everything arrives pre-portioned, so there's less prep, less mess, and no wasted food. Save time and money. Home Chef customers save an average of $86 per month on groceries. For a limited time, Home Chef is offering our listeners 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Just go to homechef.com/lockedon. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 50% off your first box, free shipping, and free dessert for life. Must be an active subscriber to receive the free dessert. Tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. With TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert start to finish without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything from W-2s to self-employed forms and work to get your deductions every single time. It's a huge time saver and gives real peace of mind knowing an expert is handling it. For a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150. Whether TurboTax experts filed for you last year or did not, just file by February 28th. Take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. Welcome back to the Tuesday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. He's Rob Rang. A special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in. And thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate your support of the podcast. We are now closing in on 4 days until the Super Bowl, and it's X Factor time. Yesterday, Rob, we looked at offensive X Factors, players that maybe are under the radar a little bit. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's somebody that isn't a starter or has to be somebody that was coming off the practice squad or whatever, but maybe somebody that isn't your typical Leonard Williams or Sam Darnold or Ken Walker or one of these guys that everybody's going to be watching going into this game. So let's talk defensive X factors, players who may have a great opportunity to make a major impact in this game and maybe push for an MVP honor that aren't being discussed about and certainly aren't MVP honor favorites on FanDuel props right now.
Yeah, the player I'm going to start off the conversation with, Corbin, I am not expecting that he is going to be in the MVP conversation. But at the same time, I still believe that a legitimate X factor in this game is big Jarran Reed. I just think that the 6'3", 300-pounder, his ability to play up and down the line of scrimmage, his strength at the point of attack. I mentioned this before that one of the things that concerns me from a Seattle perspective is New England's running game specifically, whether it be Drake Maye, Ramondre Stevenson, or the rookie Travion Henderson. They ran for an awful lot of touchdowns this past season. Jarran Reed's ability to clog up holes, I think, has been a little bit overlooked because of Byron Murphy, because of Leonard Williams and DeMarcus Lawrence. I think that Jarran Reed, as well as maybe a Brandon Peely, are two of the more underrated run stuffers on this team. And I would argue that is one of the biggest reasons why Seattle is playing in Santa Clara.
And you just mentioned my first player. I'm staying in the interior on the trenches as well. Look, Brandon Peely has been one of those guys this year. He has very quietly done some great things up front when he has had his chances. And I look at the way New England runs the ball and having a two-headed monster, particularly Ramondre Stevenson this game. I think you've got to be stout at the point of attack. You've got to have some size. You got to have some physicality. Brandon Peely, I think, is going to give them some really good snaps. And in fact, I could see him getting into the backfield for a play or two in this game because he's kind of one of those sneaky athletes for his size. He'll make some plays sometimes that surprise you. We saw the forced fumble on a kickoff earlier this year. And he'll do some things that surprise you athletically. So for me, Brandon Peely is the first player that I've got as a big X factor, both literally and figuratively going into this game. And then I want to talk Drake Thomas as my second one. And I mentioned this earlier, just because you're a starter doesn't mean you can't be an X factor. I think Drake Thomas outside of Seattle still is very much an unsung hero that isn't being talked about a lot because he's got an all-pro linebacker playing next to him in Ernest Jones. He wasn't even a starter at the beginning of the season, but the human missile every single game seems to deliver 2 or 3 plays. I think it's not an exaggeration to say that make your jaw drop. Like he has a couple plays every game where just like, how did he get to that play? Or how did he get downhill that quickly? Or just hit sticks guys. I mean, he is a heavy hitter for a guy of his size and his stature. I could see him making a major impact in this game. And I also think I mentioned this earlier. He's going to get some QB spy duty because I think he and Nick Eamon-Wari and Ernest Jones can do it too. All 3 of those guys can play that role. But Drake Thomas is that guy that can fly sideline to sideline, that can erase a quarterback run really quickly. Unfortunately, Jaden Daniels learned that the hard way in the Washington game with how quickly he closed that gap, and he ended up getting hurt on that play. Daniels did. This guy is a perfect fit in the inside to do that, and I just think this is an ideal opponent for him to be able to get after it and play to his strengths. I expect Mike McDonald's going to unleash him on a few blitzes in this game.
Well, and I always love the rivalry aspect of this. I love the fact that Seattle is playing New England again, just because you want to be able to kind of erase those wounds from over a decade ago. I think that Drake Thomas, NC State, graduates going up against the North Carolina product and Drake Maye, that I think that just adds a little bit more salt to that. And the fact that he is a pending free agent, one of several. And the next player that I was going to mention is another pending free agent who is coming off of quite the opposite type of a season as Drake Thomas. Drake Thomas has had the best season of his NFL career, of course, whereas Boye Mafe, starting only 4 games this year, has 2 sacks on the season. I just think that this is a prime opportunity to go up against, frankly, a couple of offensive tackles that I think are a little bit overmatched. If Seattle does get the lead early, I think it's going to be a little bit of time to kind of turn the dogs loose, so to speak, on the outside. And I think that Boye Mafe still has the best burst of any of Seattle's pass rushers. And I would not be surprised. We've seen Boye Mafe do this in the past. He certainly did it as a collegiate player. Splashy final season, unbelievable in the Senior Bowl when the lights were brightest. This is exactly the type of opportunity I think that Boye Mafe makes a splashy play. I mentioned before, I think the Seattle is going to get up there around that 5-6 sacks number. Don't be surprised at all. Boye Mafe gets 1, perhaps even 2 of those. And also watch out getting your hands up in the air for those deflections. While he didn't play a lot of football this year, the second highest number, 5 pass breakups this year for Boye Mafe. That could be the tip pass, pick 6 kind of big play the Seahawks are looking for on defense.
And last but not least, to close out my X factors, a guy that played only 2 defensive snaps in the NFC Championship game, Tayakata. I think some fans are going to be thinking, well, where does he fit into the mix here? Against the Rams, the Seahawks did not deploy the 4 safety looks near as often what we have seen. I think in this game that we might see them go back to that because New England has such a vertical-oriented passing game. I think they're going to want that extra safety on the field. I think it gives them some versatility with how they can mix and match guys in coverage, blitzing. I don't know that Okada plays a ton of snaps, but even if he plays only 5 or 6, I would be confident Tayakata is going to make something positive happen with those opportunities. I could see Mike McDonald sending him on a safety blitz. I could see him getting his hands on a football. He just seems to find his way. As McDonald talks about, the ball finds energy. This dude is a ball of energy. And I think Tayakata in a game like this, I could even see the impact play coming on special teams. He hasn't been counted on as much this year because he started a lot of games on defense, but he's a very good special teams player as well. I could see Tayakata coming up. In fact, I would be surprised if he doesn't make some type of a significant play in this football game.
Yeah, just a really good football player, whether it's special teams or defense. I would not be surprised at all if Ty kind of made a play like that. I also wouldn't be surprised at all if it's the starter in Julian Love. And look, I mean, it's low-hanging fruit here if we're going to be talking about a starter like Julian Love. I mean, he was, of course, missed a lot of this season, roughly half of the season, but he started all 8 games, very much unlike Jaron Reed, who started 3 games this year of his 13 he was available, and Mafe starting 4 of 17 games. But with Julian Love, he is a player that, while we all acknowledge that he's very good, the production hasn't been there this season. 1 interception so far this season, a career low 34 tackles so far this season. Again, hugely a byproduct of him not being on the field. But the one concern, again, that I have about New England is their ability to create their own explosive plays, especially with the rookie running back Travion Henderson. Corbin, he scored 9 touchdowns this season to lead all rookie NFL running backs. He only had 180 touches. The efficiency with which this kid scores is just through the roof. So I think it's absolutely critical that Seattle rally to the football, clean, open field tackles, don't give up the big play. Travion Henderson is really good at that. Julian Love is really good at stopping that. I think that does make him an important X factor, not necessarily splashy statistics that might get you the MVP award, but I do think that he is going to play a critical role in this football game.
As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, crossover Thursday, Super Bowl edition. I'll be teaming up with Locked On Patriots, and we're going to take an even deeper dive into Super Bowl 60. Make sure that you are listening in and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Go Hawks.